Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company on the 440 Sports Network, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Today is the trade deadline special. Again, thank you for joining the Stillman & Company YouTube page at Stillman & Co. Like and subscribe. And we have less than an hour to go until the NFL trade deadline, which is at 3 o'clock Eastern time. The Titans have already made one move. They made the trade for Dre'Mont Jones to the Ravens in exchange for a conditional fifth-round pick that will most likely stay a fifth-round pick, but we'll get to that in a second. There are rumors about other moves that may be on the horizon as far as the Titans are concerned. There is a rumor out there, again, as far as the Titans are concerned, about what they won't do because of Amy Adams-Strunk. We'll get to that. There are other trades across the NFL that are being made, and we will hit on all of that, and we will take you through 3 o'clock, through the deadline, in which we will see if the Titans or anybody else makes any other crazy moves. As of right now on Twitter, I have Adam Schefter with the notification. So anytime he tweets something, we'll just go ahead and plop it right in there and say, Adam Schefter's reporting or so-and-so's reporting or whatever. So welcome again to Stillman & Company, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Let's start with just a quick recap of where we sit as of right now. Yesterday, the Tennessee Titans made a trade with the Baltimore Ravens, sending pass rusher Dre'Mont Jones, 4.5 sacks in his last 4 games. Dre'Mont Jones to the Baltimore Ravens for a conditional fifth-round pick. The conditions were revealed this morning that if Dre'Mont Jones gets 2 sacks, and the Ravens make the playoffs, which is by no means a shoo-in, if that happens, the pick would then become a 4th-round pick instead of a 5th-round pick. I'll get my thoughts on that in a second. I am one that has believed that the NFL trade deadline is usually overrated. It is used to sell interest. It is used to get people to turn on the TV to hear what Adam Schefter has to say. And then today, the New York Jets woke up and decided, we're going to blow the whole fucking thing up. And that's exactly what the New York Jets did. Because this morning, I was shocked when I saw the trade. Sauce Gardner, who is a good corner, but again, he plays corner. Sauce Gardner to the Colts for 2 first-round picks. Then I saw the news that which just came out within the last hour or so, that Quinnen Williams goes to the Dallas Cowboys, and I think Jeffery Simmons is a better player than Quinnen Williams, though they're very comparable. Quinnen Williams to the Dallas Cowboys, who freaking stink, to the Dallas Cowboys in exchange for a first in 2027 and a second in this upcoming draft. And I thought, oh my God, those are massive for deals that we usually don't see around the NFL trade deadline. Usually, in my opinion, these are kind of moves that happen in March, usually the big trades with the big picks or maybe training camp, when it's money time. That's when those things happen. And contracts and money usually aren't around the trade deadline. And that's exactly what we've gotten huge moves from a Jet team that has decided, hey, we're going to blow this whole thing up. So I want to start on the Dre'Mont Jones trade. I just want to get the Dre'Mont Jones take out there for the trade yesterday that the Titans made, and then we'll move into kind of my takeaways from the deadline day, what the Titans are probably going to do, what the Titans should do, etc. So we'll continue to monitor the trades that the Titans may or may not make within the next hour. But the Dre'Mont Jones trade yesterday, that's a solid trade. Dre'Mont Jones is a player who can help an NFL team looking to compete right now. And the Titans get a pick back that has some, not a ton, but some value. And for the most part, unless the Jets get involved, that in my experience, has been the NFL trade deadline in a nutshell. If the Titans aren't willing to trade Jeffery Simmons, and they've made it clear that they're not, then they're not going to get any earth-shattering returns. And if the Titans had been willing to trade Jeffery Simmons, who knows what they would have been able to get as part of the deal. Because again, I think he's better than Quinnen Williams. But the pick that they got for Dre'Mont Jones is not nothing. Dre'Mont Jones was not going to be on the team next year. He was a solid player. He can help the Ravens. And this pick will land between what I think is pick 119 and 145. And I looked it up today and I said, okay, what picks have the Titans made in the past that have landed between 119 and 145, just for reference? And I'm talking about guys that actually, contributed, because there's a lot of guys out there that haven't. But Gunnar Helm was within that group. Elic, Ayomanor, Jarvis, Brownlee, Hassan, Haskins, Chig Okonkwo, Tajae, Sharpe, Karl, Klug, David Stewart, Jacob Bell, Justin McCareins, Peter Sirmon, Benji, Olson, a starting guard for a decade. I mean, there are solid players that can be picked in that price range of where that pick with the Ravens, which I guess is technically coming from the Jets, is going to come in. It's not a bad trade. Unlike the Jarvis Brownlee Jr. trade, which was a bad trade. But if you think the Titans are going to remake their ball club off of fifth-round picks, you're wrong. That's not how you rebuild an NFL team. And when I look at what the Jets are doing, they're saying, hey, we may have had a top defense, but we're dead last. So Sauce Gardner is helping us be dead last. Quinnen Williams is helping us be dead last. So we don't need these guys to be dead last. So let's build for the future, because we're not going to win today. And the Titans are saying we're not going to win today, but maybe if we hang on to Jeffery Simmons, we're going to win tomorrow. And I feel pretty certain, reading the tea leaves when it comes to the Titans, that they are going to essentially clear the decks when the season is over of players they didn't draft and players they didn't sign, with the exception of Peter Skoronski, J.C. Latham, and Jeffery Simmons. And I don't think that's necessarily a good idea, just to say, well, let's get rid of all the other guys' players because we want our own players. Because, again, if you're going to win, Sean McVay took over the Rams, and it wasn't like he said, well, we got to get rid of Todd Gurley. No, he won with Jeff Fisher's players. But what they're going to do is they're going to get rid of the players that they don't see on this team next year, who don't necessarily directly affect Cam, and they're going to keep the guys who probably aren't going to be on the team next year, but who do affect Cam. So Kevin Zeitler and Lloyd Cushenberry, blocking for Cam, they stay. Roger McCreary and Dre'Mont Jones, they don't directly affect Cam, they go. And I believe that at the end of the day, and this is probably what the Titans are working on right now, they'll probably take whatever they can get for Tony Pollard, Arden Key, Xavier Woods, and Chig Okonkwo. And they don't expect any of those guys on the team next year. They'll give Tajae Spears, Tony Pollard's carries. They'll put David Martin Robinson into Chig Okonkwo's spot. Gunnar Helm will get more reps. There won't be takers for all those guys. There may not be a single taker for those guys, but I think they'll take whatever they can get with an asterisk. And I'd like to, whoops, I just sent my pen flying. I'd like to keep that asterisk right by here for a second. They'll take whatever they can get for those guys. Then there are the question marks. Calvin Ridley and T'Vondre Sweat. Calvin Ridley is a big enigma because Ridley is hurt. But Ridley is somewhat productive in the NFL, and he's due $21 million next year in cash, which in today's wide receiver market isn't a lot of money. But I lean towards keeping Ridley because, and I would probably keep Ridley into next season, because even if he's just wide receiver 2, and he's not a wide receiver 1, he's not Jamar Chase, he's not Justin Jefferson, he's not one of these earth-shattering, game-changing type of players. But as a wide receiver 2, if you move off of Ridley after this year, then you have to go get another wide receiver. But I also feel like this group doesn't particularly care for Ridley. So it feels like what I think happened was they reached out to teams to see what people would be interested in giving them for Ridley. And they found out that people weren't going to give them anything. So they'll probably just keep Ridley. T'Vondre Sweat, I don't think they'll find a taker who will give them any real value back. So it's not worth blowing up what is a fine run-stuffing DT, even if he's fat and lazy and doesn't get to the quarterback, with the hopes that maybe the next coaching staff can get through to him. So there's that. That's what's on tap for the Titans. They're not going to make any moves like the Jets today because the Titans are not going to trade Jeffery Simmons. And Jeffery Simmons is the only player that they have that could get them any sort of meaningful return. So they'll try to get whatever they can get for Tony Pollard, Arden Key, Xavier Woods, and Chig Okonkwo with an asterisk right next to it. And then after 3 o'clock today, we're just going to ride out the next 8 games with Mike McCoy as the interim head coach, and then they'll blow that up again. And who knows if Mount Amy will erupt at the end of the season and change the front office dynamics again. Who knows? But that's where the Titans are. Now, there are some potential moves out there. And there are 2, I would say, somewhat conflicting reports. We'll get to that in a second. First, I want to tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. They take great care of my home, and they can do the exact same for you. Hiller's been in business since 1990. They are family-owned and operated. That is true. They are family-owned and operated with professional, experienced, trustworthy technicians who come into your home and leave it clean and better than they found it. They have 100% satisfaction. If happy, you'll be, the service is free. And if a customer is not pleased with the work performed, Hiller will make it right. Learn more at happyhiller.com, where care is their core value. They believe that when they care about others, everybody wins, and they will take care of every customer on every job, every time. I know that because I use Hiller at my home. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the National Predators, the Vanderbilt Commodores, and the Tennessee Volunteers. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Okay, so again, I said that the Tennessee Titans right now are probably working the phones, trying to see what they can get for Tony Pollard, Arden Key, Xavier Woods, and Chig Okonkwo. Maybe there's another player in there like a Jihad Ward or somebody like that. But for the most part, the guys that they expect to be on the team next year, Cam Ward, Chimray DK, J.C. Latham, Peter Skoronsky, Tajae Spears, Gunnar Helm, Cedric Gray, those guys, they're not going to trade. And then the guys that have zero trade value because they're Jalen Armour Davis, they're not going to trade them either. So they're probably trying to get whatever they can get with an asterisk, and that asterisk comes via this report from Mike Giardi, longtime Boston media dude, worked at then Comcast Sportsnet New England. Now he worked at NFL Network for a while. Now he's doing his own thing out there. Mike Giardi apparently reported earlier today that he was told, quote, there have been some conversations league-wide that Tennessee might be unwilling to make deals with New England because the owner, Amy Adams Strunk, continues to think too much about how things ended with Mike Vrabel and is not inclined to help his new team. We'll find out soon enough with the likes of edge Arden Key, running back Tony Pollard, and even wide receiver Calvin Ridley available. So that was the report out of Boston today, is that apparently Amy may not want to make a deal with New England because she may not want to help out Mike Vrabel. Now, the reason I said there was kind of a conflicting report with this is because Jimmy Stewart, who is the producer of the very popular Felger and Maserati program in Boston at 98.5 The Sports Hub, he has what's called the bat phone. And when it comes to Boston and it comes to the teams there, the Celtics and the Bruins and the Patriots, apparently he's got this phone that when his phone lights up, hey, that's info. And he sent out a tweet around noon today that said, quote, thoughts on Tony Pollard. He didn't say the Patriots are trading for Tony Pollard, but he said, thoughts on Tony Pollard, i.e., is there any thought out there? Because what it sounds like Jay Stu is hearing is that he's hearing that Tony Pollard may be on his way to New England. So we'll keep our eye on that. Again, conflicting reports. The first report was that Amy Adams Strunk does not want to trade with Mike Vrabel, which, based on what I know, I would not be shocked if that was true. But I also don't know that that's true. And while Amy, it does sound like, is very petty, I'm not sure she's that petty. I'm not sure that she would sit there and say, no, I am not going to trade for an extra pick because Mike Vrabel disrespected me at his Patriots Hall of Fame induction. So I don't know if it's true or not. I do trust Giardi, but at the same time, I'm also very skeptical. And then I also take into account what Jimmy Stewart said, which is he said thoughts on Tony Pollard, which makes me think, again, I've listened to that show for 10 years, and I've been on that show a handful of times. I'm telling you, my assumption is when Jimmy Stewart puts out there thoughts on Tony Pollard, he is saying it without saying it that he's hearing Tony Pollard may be on his way to New England. Again, what is Tony Pollard worth? A 5th-round pick, a 4th-round pick? That is not the earth-shattering type moves that kind of either help you rebuild your ball club or set your ball club even further back. And today, the Jets have decided they're going to make those moves. The first move I was shocked by. Sauce Gardner, who signed a massive contract extension in the offseason, shipped off to the Colts for 2 first-round picks. And I read that and I thought, 2 first-round picks for a corner? And they weren't done because they shipped off Quinnen Williams to the Dallas Cowboys for a first-round pick and for a second-round pick. And I guess Mozzie Smith, but Mozzie Smith sucks. That's like A.D. Mitchell was thrown in the Jets-Colts deal. Whatever. Mozzie Smith stinks. A.D. Mitchell hasn't been the player I thought he was going to be when he was drafted out of Texas. So whatever on those. But again, the picks, it's like, holy shit, look at those picks. So I have a big takeaway when it comes to what the Jets are doing and what the Colts are doing and what the Titans are doing and what the Cowboys are doing. And I think this is something that we need to be very aware of when it comes to the NFL. The trade deadline movement. I don't think this is general manager driven. I don't think this is head coach driven. I think this is all ownership driven. I think the reason that we're seeing fireworks today are because of the owners that are telling their general managers, I want to make that move. I need to make that move. We need this. We need that. And I use the Jets. We'll start with them. It is obvious that Woody Johnson, the owner of the Jets, thinks so little of Justin Fields after what he said last week that he's just going to tear the whole thing up. He doesn't have a quarterback. They stink. He's got a new head coach who he thinks is the bee's knees, and he is just going to tear it all down. And he's looking at it thinking, well, I'm a last place team with Sauce Gardner and a last place team with Quinnen Williams. So fuck this year, maybe even fuck next year. Let's go down the road to a couple years from now and let's rebuild around these picks. And so the owner tells the general manager and tells the coach that we're not worried about this year. We're not worried about next year. We need to find our quarterback. And so blow it up. So they blow it up. And they look at it like 2 first-round picks. Because, again, all first-round picks are viewed as equals, even though the 3rd overall pick in a draft has a significantly higher value than the 23rd overall pick in a draft. I think Indianapolis's decision to trade away 2 first-round picks in order to get a corner is A, stupid, but B, ownership-driven. Here's Carly Ursay-Gordon. She's in charge for the first time. Shockingly, they're at the top of the AFC. And instead of saying, wow, we've played a really weak schedule, We've got a really good running back, a solid offensive line. Daniel Jones has stabilized the quarterback position. We can build our team not just for this year, but for the next couple of years. She's sitting there, first-time owner, enjoying the success, and she's probably telling Chris Ballard, go for it. Go for it. Chris Ballard's probably like, all right, well, she wants us to go for it, so going for it. And that's going for it. But I just wouldn't bank my future on Daniel Jones, which is what they're doing. I went on an Indianapolis Colts podcast a couple weeks ago before the Titans played the Colts, and I said, this year's Indianapolis Colts team is the 2019 Titans. The Ryan Tannehill comes in, stabilizes the quarterback position. There's solid players on the roster, couple of star players like an A.J. Brown or a Derrick Henry. In this case, Jonathan Taylor is a star. They hit in the draft with the tight end that they were lucky enough that Chicago passed on in order to get Tyler Warren out of Penn State, who I think is a great player. And so Daniel Jones comes in, he stabilizes the quarterback position. They've played a weak schedule, and they're off to a decent start. But do you really think that Indianapolis is going to beat the Kansas City Chiefs in a playoff game? Do you think if they host Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, that they're going to beat them in an AFC playoff game? I don't. Again, they got stomped this week by the Steelers, and the Steelers are an average AFC playoff team. If Indianapolis were to play any potential AFC team, New England, Denver, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, I'd say it's a toss-up. If they were to play an elite quarterback, the Chargers, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Bills, I'd probably have to lean towards the quarterback. And before you tell me that they already beat the Chargers, guess what? Ryan Tannehill beat Patrick Mahomes in the regular season in 2019 too. But he couldn't beat him in the AFC title game. The other thing is, both the Cowboys and the Colts are trading picks in the 2027 draft. I'd be very careful with that because you don't know how good your team's going to be in 2027. Right now, Indianapolis thinks we're dealing the 25th pick and we're going to deal the 27th pick in next year's draft in order to get Sauce Gardner. But what we've seen far too many times is teams that think they're going to be good a couple of years out deal first-round picks that end up being very high first-round picks when they end up not being very good. Case in point, when the LA Rams dealt their first-round picks in order to get Matthew Stafford, they won the Super Bowl. So Detroit didn't get a great first-round pick, but then the next year, they were awful. And Detroit got a very good first-round pick. I mean, I'm happy for Indianapolis. I don't view Indianapolis with the hatred that I have for the Baltimore Ravens. I don't like the Colts. I root against them, but I'm happy for Indianapolis that they're solid this year, that they're having a nice season. I'm sure it's fun. But you have no idea. Again, with Daniel Jones at quarterback, you have no idea if you're going to be any good next year, which means that 2027 first-round pick could be the 8th overall pick in the draft. I think that's a risk. I think that's a risk that I wouldn't necessarily want to take. So I understand when it comes to why the Colts are doing it. The owner is saying, go for it. I understand why the Jets are doing it. The owner is saying, tear it all down. We know the owner is calling the shots in Dallas. Dallas stinks. The Dallas Cowboys should be tearing the team down, with the exception of Dak Prescott. They should be looking to trade George Pickens, and they should be looking to trade guys on defense, and they should be looking to rebuild for the future with the picks they also have for the Micah Parsons trade, but not Jerry. Jerry's looking at this thinking, well, if we could just get this defense a little bit better, I mean, I can build this defense and we can go out there and we can make a run in the playoffs. No, you can't. You gave up on the season when you traded Micah Parsons. You didn't know that you gave up on the season when you traded Micah Parsons, but you gave up on the season when you traded Micah Parsons. So I'm sorry. Like, when it comes to why these decisions are made, don't look at the general managers. Unless it's Dallas, whose general manager is their owner. I think these are ownership-driven decisions. And I think the decision to keep Jeffery Simmons on the Titans is an ownership-driven decision. I would not keep Jeffery Simmons on this team if I were the Titans. And you can tell me that, hey, Jeffery Simmons is a good player, and as soon as you trade Jeffery Simmons, you're going to be looking for another Jeffery Simmons. And I agree. But the problem is, Jeffery Simmons is 28, which means next year he's going to be 29, and the year after that he's going to be 30. So by the time you get good again, because you're not going to be good this year and you're probably not going to be good next year, by the time you get good again, Jeffery Simmons is going to be out of his prime. That's when you trade. That's when you trade the guy. When the guy is not going to have value for you when you need him to be valuable. That's when you trade. And I believe it's the owner who has said, we're not trading Jeffery Simmons. I wonder if they went to her and said, hey, here's our deadline plans. We'd like to trade so-and-so. And she was like, nope, not trading Jeff. The same way she said a couple years ago, nope, not trading Derrick Henry. Again, the conversations may start between the general managers, but I think the decisions at the trade deadline are all made by the owners. The Jets are blowing it up and they're starting over from scratch because I think the owner wants to start over from scratch. The Colts are going all in because I think their first-year owner is excited about their start, and she thinks they can probably compete for the Super Bowl when I think most of us don't think they can. Dallas is stupidly burning assets to make up for a mistake that they made at the beginning of the season because of Jerry's ego. Jerry's ego caused the first problem, and now Jerry's ego is making the second mistake. Again, ownership driven. And I think the Titans are keeping Jeffery Simmons because the owner wants to keep Jeffery Simmons. Whether that's because the owner wants to be good next year or thinks there's a chance they can be good, or because the owner wants at least one star player when she moves into that new stadium, I don't know. But I think it is an ownership-driven decision to keep Jeffery Simmons when I think what the Jets are doing, not necessarily going to be the best, but I do think that that is a move I would make. If I got offered the same package they got offered for Quinnen Williams for Simmons, I would have made the trade. So that's what I would have done because I think you need the picks. Now, when it comes to the making of the picks and the trading of the picks and everything else, everybody, and I think fans in general, and I think this is really important, so I want you to hear this. I think fans in general overvalue draft choices. That when we hear the word first round pick, we all of a sudden start to get very excited because the draft is such a big event. I'm noticing this even in the other sports, like in hockey. Barry Trotz told me, he said, it used to be teams would trade first-round picks for rentals. Now they're trading second-round picks for rentals. Why? Because people care more about the draft nowadays, so they want to have those first-round picks so that they have something to draft on draft night. And I think the draft has become such a big event as far as the NFL is concerned, that NFL teams value these picks and NFL fans value these first-round picks more than they are necessarily worth. I see a lot of people that are condemning the Jets for acquiring 3 first-round picks today and a second-round pick because they gave up Quinnen Williams and they gave up Sauce Gardner. I was watching the Pat McAfee show. Bruce Arians was sitting there, and Bruce Arians was like, well, what are you going to go do? Go get another Sauce Gardner? Go get another Quinnen Williams? I mean, what are you going to do? Now, I'm always very skeptical when it comes to listening to coaches as far as trading is concerned. The old man used to tell me the job of the GM is to protect the team from the coach, to keep Bill O'Brien from dealing all of his first-round picks in order to get Laramie Tunsil. So I always hear that with a grain of salt. But I understand the point that Bruce Arians is making. And Quinnen Williams, you get a first-round pick for him, great. That first-round pick may not be very good. Quinnen Williams is very good. But I go back to the Herschel Walker trade, because I have studied this Herschel Walker trade up and down. And I go back to previous trades that have been made. And Jimmy Johnson, when he talks about the Herschel Walker trade, I love how he talks about the original discussions when he decided to deal Herschel Walker. He said he was jogging with his assistant coaches, and he said the Cowboys roster was so bad, there was not a player on that team that he would not have considered trading in order to make the team better. And the one player they had that had any value was Herschel Walker. And he said to the coaches, what do you think about trading Herschel Walker? And the coaches looked at him like, what are you, crazy? That's the only good player we have. And then after the trade was consummated, and it was kind of a secret trade because Jimmy knew the conditions of the trade, the media did not, and the fans did not, but Jimmy knew he was going to get all those picks. The fans did not know that at the time. And Jimmy says the most important part was the guys they picked. In every instance, I can show you a sign of a team that traded away first-round draft picks to get a player that was supposed to lead them to the promised land and never did. And the players they traded away ended up winning a Super Bowl somewhere else. Again, Herschel Walker. Minnesota didn't win the Super Bowl with Herschel Walker. Dallas did, with Emmitt Smith and Russell Maryland and all those guys, Darren Woodson, all the guys that they acquired from that trade. On the other hand, I can tell you about Jalen Ramsey being traded to the LA Rams for 2 first-round picks. And Jacksonville drafted Kayvon Chason and Travis Etienne with those picks. Now, if they had drafted Justin Jefferson, we may look at that a little differently. The point is, when it comes to trading picks in the NFL, it's not really about this trade is going to work, because you don't know that. You don't know that Indianapolis is going to have the 28th overall pick in the draft this year or the 27th overall pick in the draft next year. And we have no idea if Darren Mogi, the general manager of the Jets, I think I got that right. We have no idea if Darren Mogi has any clue on how to draft. But if you're the Jets, you're a last place team with Quinnen Williams. You're a last place team with Sauce Gardner. You might as well try something. And if you're not willing to trade guys that have value, then you're not willing to make the Herschel Walker trade. That's what the Jets are trying to do today. They are trying to manufacture their own Herschel Walker trade. And I have no idea if it's going to work or not. I suspect that it will have mixed results. They'll probably get a good player or two, but they probably won't win a championship based off of the trades that they've made today. But I don't know that. I watched the Titans trade A.J. Brown for Treylon Burks and Malik Willis. Obviously, that didn't work. But that doesn't mean that trading away a star player who wants a new contract is not ever going to work, because it has in the past. Stephon Diggs wanted a new contract. Minnesota traded him, and they drafted Justin Jefferson. So, again, What I'm here to tell you is there's no way to know if these trades were good or bad, or there's no real way to know because we don't know who the Jets are going to pick. The one thing I will say when it comes to the Jets-Colts trade, I don't like it for Indianapolis for one reason. I don't think there is a single corner on the planet who is worth 2 first-round picks. Again, that's 10 years of contractual control for a corner. I get it for a quarterback. I get it for a pass rusher. I even would consider it for a franchise tackle, a Joe Alt type player. This guy's going to be your starting left tackle for the next 15 years. Okay, I can deal 2 first-round picks for that. Micah Parsons, franchise pass rusher. I can deal 2 first-round picks for that. Starting quarterback, legit, Matthew Stafford. I can deal 2 first-round picks for that. And sometimes it's going to blow up in your face the way that Russell Wilson blew up in the Denver Broncos' face, and that's okay. But a corner? I just don't think corners are that valuable. I deal 2 first-round draft choices for Penei Sewell, or 2 first-round draft choices for Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase. But I don't think I deal 2 first-round draft choices for a defensive tackle or a guard or an inside backer. Is Fred Warner, and I know he's always hurt, but is Fred Warner worth 2 first-round draft choices? I don't think so. Now, Ed Reed might be worth 2 first-round draft choices, but most safeties are not worth 2 first-round draft choices. I don't think there's a corner in the league, whether it's Patrick Surtain, whether it's Sauce Gardner, whether it's Derek Stingley. I don't think there is a single corner in the league that is worth 10 years of top 30 control, which is what the Colts gave up. And the other thing I do not understand, and I get it, you're riding with the horse that took you there, and you're really going to go all in on Daniel Jones. Like, that's what you're doing. You're going all in on Daniel Jones. You're saying that we're going to build a team around Daniel Jones for the next 2 years that we think can beat Josh Allen, or that we think can beat Patrick Mahomes. And there are some guys that when it comes to going all in on, and they're not at the level of a Patrick Mahomes, or they're not at the level of a Josh Allen, and I'm like, fine. If I had Justin Herbert as my quarterback, I would go all in around Herbert to try to go beat Mahomes, or all in around Herbert to beat Allen. Got it. Daniel Jones, I know he's having a nice season. I'm not ready to go all in on Daniel Jones. And that's what they're doing. Because now they're committed to Daniel Jones for next year, which they probably were going to be anyways. But you're committed to Daniel Jones for next year. And after that, Jonathan Taylor's going to be old, and Michael Pittman's going to be old, and Sauce Gardner's going to start to get old, and you're not going to have any first-round picks, and then you're going to stink. So, again, not knocking the Colts. They made a business decision. I can see the owner sitting there saying, hey, we're all in. But that's the one I don't understand. Now, if you win a Super Bowl because of it, then congratulations. That was the right call. If you get to a couple AFC championship games and those turn into the 28th and 29th picks in the draft, then I'd say, good job. Like, that's solid. But what I worry about with Indy is that Indy is looking at this thinking, we're right there with the rest of the AFC. And Sauce Gardner is going to help us against Mahomes. But you still have to rush the passer. And then the thought is, we're going to be dealing away the 25th pick in the draft and the 29th pick in the draft, and we're not going to be dealing away the 7th pick in the draft because we're not going to be bad. The Rams didn't think they were going to be bad either in 2022, and then they were. The Broncos didn't think they were going to be bad when they traded for Russell Wilson, and then they were. I'm all for going for it when you think you've got a team that can win, But I think you also have to be realistic for whether or not A, your team can win, and B, protecting your future. And because I think this was an ownership-driven choice where the owner told the GM, go for it, I think Indy probably made a deal they will ultimately regret. So, those are kind of my thoughts so far on the trade deadline. And then again, with Jerry Jones, I mean, I don't know what Jerry Jones is doing. I really don't. Are you going for the Super Bowl or are you not going for the Super Bowl? 2 years ago, the Dallas Cowboys were the number 2 seed in the NFC playoffs, and they hosted the Green Bay Packers in the first round of the NFC playoffs. And so the Green Bay Packers walk into Dallas, and they beat the ever-loving crap out of the Dallas Cowboys. And Jerry Jones was heartbroken that night. And if I was a Dallas Cowboy fan or owned the team, I would have been heartbroken too. Personally, I kind of enjoyed watching the Cowboys suffer the way they did, but that's a different discussion. But Jerry Jones said afterwards, we're all in. And then he did nothing in free agency. Do you want to win the Super Bowl or do you not? Stephen Jones was asked by my colleague at SiriusXM, Adam Shine, why didn't you go after Derrick Henry? And Stephen Jones said the salary cap was why they didn't do it. And I rolled my eyes and I'm like, the cap, come on now. Jerry wasn't all in. So then they struggle because they didn't improve their football team. They fire the coach. They go out and they get a lackey to be a yes man to Jerry. And then they trade away Micah Parsons. That's a rebuild. You may not like it, but you had a window 2 years ago. You blew it against the Packers. You've done nothing to improve the ball club since then. That's a rebuild. That is a rebuild. And now they're turning around and trading a first-round pick for Quinnen Williams? Jerry doesn't know what he's doing. It's all ego with Jerry Jones. It's all, I'm not going to be told what to do by Micah Parsons and Micah Parsons' agent. I'll show him. And then he trades Micah Parsons. Now the defense is terrible. Dak can't do it all by himself. So now it's, well, I got to go fix this defense, so I'll trade my highest first-round pick in a loaded 2027 draft, which is probably going to end up being number 8 overall, and I'm going to trade that to go get Quinnen Williams so that we cannot make the playoffs this year. It's like, Jerry, what are you doing? What? So, again, I get what the Colts are doing. They think they're going for it, so they're going to go for it. Fine. I get what the Jets are doing. They think we're a last-place team with Quinnen Williams. We're a last-place team with Sauce Gardner. Screw it. Let's blow it up. See if we can get players, young players, under our contractual control that play super premium positions. We can get a quarterback one day, and let's see if we cannot be last place. Fine. Jerry, I don't know what he's doing. That I don't know. All right, let's get to some of your reaction. Here on the trade deadline day, again, the Titans made the trade for Dre'Mont Jones. I do want to get to one thing that Dre'Mont Jones did say, because I did find this at least a little fascinating. He sent out a tweet yesterday after he was traded, and in the tweet, he really pumped the tires of Cam Ward, saying, quote, Cam is the truth too. Y'all give him time. He can be great, with an exclamation point. And I did take note of that. Like, that did cross my radar, and I did say, you know what? There is a little something to that. Now, I usually take what players say about things that they don't really know anything about, like Dre'Mont Jones and quarterback evaluations. I usually take that with a grain of salt because, as Floyd once told me, players don't know shit. But at the same time, that did feel and that did sound like an unprompted comment by a defensive player on his way out the door, because that defensive player wanted to make sure everybody knew, hey, I believe in Cam Ward. And I was talking to a friend last night at the Preds game about how I've been doing this now for so long that I have a knowledge of having lived through a lot of this stuff before. And multiple occasions where I've lived through a team doing something that has been done before and saying, okay, well, I've seen this before. And usually the way that this happens is. And so I've lived through the Titans drafting a young quarterback and everybody wanting to believe that this guy's going to be the future and everything else. I don't ever remember players leaving the team and saying that kind of stuff that Dre'Mont Jones said yesterday on his way out the door about Cam Ward. I don't remember them saying that stuff about Marcus Mariota. I mean, I remember when DeMarco Murray left the team and DeMarco Murray was asked, hey, what do you think about Marcus? And DeMarco Murray's like, oh, yeah, Marcus, he's, he can do it. And Eric Decker was asked about Marcus, and he was like, yeah, Marcus just needs to be a little bit more vocal. But yeah, Marcus. Everybody loved Marcus. They loved Marcus, the guy. But when it came to, can Marcus, the quarterback, do it? There was not a lot of people that left here that said, oh, Marcus, he's just so good. He's going to be. And that's what Dre'Mont Jones is saying about Cam Ward. So that is notable to me, because love for somebody, the way people loved Mariota's personality, and belief, the way Dre'Mont Jones believes in Cam, are two totally different things. I love a lot of people I don't necessarily believe in. So this is notable to me. And when Mike McCoy talks about Cam's desire to be great, I don't think he's making it up. But at the same time, Will Levis wanted to be great too. And I kept telling people, when it came to the desire to be a good quarterback, Will Levis was a 10 out of 10. That if wanting to be a good quarterback meant you would be a good quarterback, Will Levis would be headed to the Hall of Fame. So the question I keep coming back to with Cam is, I know he wants it. I know he's willing to sacrifice for it. I know he's willing to do what it takes. If you were to put Cam's personality into Vince Young's body, you may have had Lamar Jackson 15 years before Lamar Jackson. But does Cam have the ability to do it? I know he's got the work ethic. I know he's got the desire. And that Dre'Mont Jones tweet shows me he's got the respect of his teammates. But does he have the ability? One of my best friends, we went to college together, Cody Iggy, pitched in the major leagues, a couple of cups of coffee in Miami and Anaheim, etc. If you're a college baseball fan, you'll remember him because he struck out Mike Yastrzemski to knock one of Vanderbilt's best teams out of the Super Regional in 2013. So Cody Iggy was as dedicated as anybody I've ever met at anything. His determination is what got him to the big leagues, from Cherokee, Iowa, from the coaches at Louisville saying, we don't even know why you're here. We want to pull your scholarship, to pitching on the mound in the ninth inning of the Super Regional, sending the team to Omaha, getting drafted, and ending up in the big leagues. It was all his determination. But in the end, he didn't have the talent that guys that stick around in the big leagues for 10, 15 years and make millions and millions and millions of dollars, he just wasn't good enough to be that kind of player. He wanted it. I watched him. He and I talk about it all the time. Now, he had some injury issues as well. But just because the spirit wants it doesn't ultimately mean that you can do it. And that's the question I have for Cam is, I know he wants it. I know he's dedicated. I know his team believes in him. But can he do it? Can he change his mechanics? Can he learn when to drop it sidearm and when not to drop it sidearm? Can he work around the fact that he's not going to see over bigger defensive linemen? And that I don't know. But I do take note of what Dre'Mont Jones said as just something to keep in mind, because when it comes to writing Cam off or how much time we should give Cam or whatever, at least we know that his teammates do believe in him. And that's important. That's not lip service. Again, Dre'Mont Jones didn't have to say that. People didn't say that about Mariota on their way out when he was the young quarterback. So that is at least somewhat notable. As far as the trades are concerned, right now, I do wonder if the Titans are done. Caleb says, Jared, if we don't make any more trades, what are your thoughts on that? I think it is insanely bad. So the real decision for the Titans has already been made. And it was, are you going to trade Jeffery Simmons or not? And the Titans have told you for weeks they're not going to trade Jeffery Simmons. Any trade that they could make, whether it's Tony Pollard, whether it's Chig Okonkwo, whether it's Xavier Woods, whether it's Arden Key, whomever it may be, any trade you can make, it would have been for a 5th-round pick, a 6th-round pick, a pick swap. You know, it's not going to be transformational that's going to change the ball club or the trajectory of the ball club. Simmons is the only guy on the roster who carries that kind of value. I believe the Titans did shop Calvin Ridley. I know TD says that he talked to the Titans and the Titans said that they weren't shopping Calvin Ridley. I don't think Rappaport and Florio are both making that up. I think the Titans were shopping Calvin Ridley because I think they thought, you know what? We're not going to trade Simmons, who does have value. We want to trade all these other guys like Chig and Arden Key, who don't have value. So let's see if Ridley, who's a legitimate number 2 receiver in the NFL, let's see if Ridley has value. Would you trade Ridley for a 2nd? Would you trade Ridley for a 3rd to the 2nd pick swap? Would you, something with value? And my guess is that the Titans, the response when they went to go shop Ridley was, no, we're not interested in Calvin Ridley. So when it comes to, is it insanely bad if the Titans don't make any other moves? I mean, yeah, I would like to deal Arden Key and get a 6th-round pick. I would like to deal Tony Pollard and get a 5th-round pick, but it's not going to incrementally change the ball club. And it certainly won't drastically change the ball club either. The truth is that the Titans have 8 more games of Mike McCoy that we have to get through, and then we'll see to which lengths they're serious about trying to rebuild the club. It looks like to me it's going to be a lot like 2 years ago, where they're just going to go out and throw a bunch of money around in free agency, maybe not even to guys that are very good, but they're just going to try to go pay the best guys out there and hope that that works. So I would say when you're this bad and you only make one trade, it is pretty telling that the Jets are willing to blow it all up. And then the Titans are like, no, we're too good for that. So that I would say is at least a little concerning, or at least a little like the Jets are willing to do it, but you're not willing to do it. Then again, I'm not sure that everybody always wants to be like the Jets. So I'll give them a little credit there. Again, I said we would take it until 3:00, where the deadline becomes official to see what all's going to happen. This has been, I got to say, this is probably the biggest trade deadline of my lifetime that I can remember, where it's like, yeah, no, they actually went all in. There was a team that ended up with 3 first-round picks. And for that, I'm shocked. Apparently, we have some news that is now just coming in breaking. This is from Paul Kaharski, who is reporting no further deals for the Titans. They are finished. So Dre'Mont Jones for a conditional 5th-round pick is the only trade the Titans are going to make at the trade deadline. Again, once you've decided you're not going to trade Jeffery Simmons, there's not a move on the roster you could make today that is going to change the trajectory of the ball club. Adding 2 extra 5th-round picks doesn't change the big picture outlook for the Titans. But I will say this, it's a little disappointing that we have to sit through this terrible season and we have to watch guys like Arden Key play the rest of the year when they're going to leave in free agency, get nothing in return. That is a little disappointing. And I go back to the Mike Giardi report earlier today that basically said, and Mike Giardi is not some bozo. Like, he is a somebody. And when Mike Giardi says he's hearing around the NFL that Amy Adams Strunk doesn't want to deal with Vrabel, I go back to what I've told you about the trade deadline. I think the Jets' moves at the trade deadline were ownership-driven. I think the Cowboys' move obviously was ownership-driven. I think the Colts' move was ownership-driven, where the owner said, go for it. And I wonder if saying, hey, we're not trading with Vrabel was ownership-driven as well. That is a little disappointing. Again, PK saying no further deals for the Titans. They are done. Mike Borgonzi will meet with the media tomorrow at 10 a.m. I will be there. I've got some thoughts on that we'll get to in a second. First, though, let's get to your reaction as far as the trade deadline is concerned here on the show. Cap says the Jets are doing what the Titans need to be doing. Again, the Jets have assets that they can trade. You had one asset, and it was Simmons. You know, it's not as if the Jets are completely tearing their team apart because they're not trading Garrett Wilson, whom, by the way, I would want to trade for if I were the Titans. I think there's a lot of people out there that would want to trade for Garrett Wilson. They're not trading away Garrett Wilson. They're not trading away Olu Fashanu. They're not trading away some of the guys that they've taken. They're just trading away Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner. And I don't have a problem with the trade for Sauce Gardner simply because I don't value corners for 2 first-round picks. There, again, is not a single corner in the NFL, whether it is Patrick Surtain, Derek Stingley, or Sauce Gardner, the 3 guys who are considered the 3 best corners in the NFL, there is not a single corner in the league that I would trade 2 first-round draft picks for. Not a single one. I mean, L'Jarius Sneed was considered one of the best corners in the league. Now, he had injury issues, and that's why nobody except for you wanted to trade for him. But L'Jarius Sneed's not that good if you don't have a pass rush. Pass rush, I'll trade for. Corner, I won't trade for. There was a game in 2021. The Titans beat the ever-living crap out of the Kansas City Chiefs at Nissan Stadium. And I remember sitting in my seat back when I used to go to the Titans games. I remember sitting in my seat watching the game. And there was a play where Greg Maben was starting at corner for the Titans. And Tyreek Hill was just running wide open across the field. And I was watching Hill, and I'm like, uh-oh. And I turn my head, and I look over, and I see Patrick Mahomes, and he's trying to get away from the rush, and he looks like a basketball player trying to make a crossover move on a defender. His eyes aren't up. He can't see Tyreek Hill running down the field. I'm expecting a Tyreek touchdown, and it's nothing because the Titans got to Mahomes on that play. Pass rush, valuable. Corners, not. Joe says, Amy is in the way. It's hard to disagree with that. Again, I think it's the owners that are doing a lot of the, hey, we want to go for it. Go make a splash move. We want to tear it down. Go make a splash move. Well, we need a defensive player because we traded away Micah Parsons. Go make a move. And I think Amy probably is getting in the way of saying, like, well, can't trade Jeffery Simmons. Well, if you're not going to trade Jeffery Simmons, there's really not a whole lot you can do. I do wonder, again, when it comes to Cam Ward, and I've been asking this question about Cam for a while, I keep wondering whose decision was it to go with Cam? Like, whose decision was it to go with Cam? Was it the owner that said, hey, I'm not paying for Sam Darnold, so go draft the quarterback? Was it the general manager? Was it the president of football operations? I don't know. But that's important to me because a lot of times when it comes to the quarterback and it comes to high prices and first round picks, and a lot of times the owner's involved. So again, according to Paul Kaharski, the Titans are done with just the Dre'Mont Jones trade. As far as I tell you, that is depressing. As far as the Titans are concerned, it's the Dre'Mont Jones trade, and that's it as far as the deadline. Nothing with Pollard, nothing with Chig, nothing. I guess you could technically count McCreary in there, but I thought that deal kind of stunk, so I don't know if I'd get overly excited about that. So I guess McCreary and Dre'Mont Jones out, and the net positive is a pick swap into the 5th round and what is likely to be a 5th round pick. Again, you can get players in that pick range that make a difference. Benji Olson started at guard for the Titans for 10 years, and he was in that pick range. Justin McCareins was the number 2 wide receiver on a team that had an MVP at quarterback. But you're not getting Eddie George in that pick range. You're not getting Steve McNair. You're not getting Keith Bullock. You're not getting Javon Curse. You're not getting those players in that pick range. Jeremy says, trade Chad Brinker for a bag of heavily used footballs. Now, I am a little surprised that Borgonzi is doing the press conference tomorrow, because how much of this is Borgonzi? How much of it's Brinker? And again, they'll never tell us, and I guess we'll never know. We'll get to the press conference here in a second. Brad says, the Jets are doing the smart things. Half of our dummy fan base wants to keep Jeff so he can leave in a year for nothing. Here's what I don't understand when it comes to Jeff Simmons. You've had him on the team for the last 3 years. You've been terrible all 3 of those years. You're terrible right now with Jeff Simmons on the team. And Jeff Simmons is playing great. And you're terrible. So what are you getting out of having Simmons on the team? And that I don't know. Derek says, I'll give Rand credit. He wanted to blow everything up and trade Jeff and Derrick Henry. However, it was overruled by Vrabel and Amy. I haven't heard that. I heard that they wanted to trade Derrick Henry. Vrabel was on board with trading Derrick Henry, and Amy said no. And I'm still not in favor of the decision to trade Derrick Henry. I think the Titans should have done everything in their power to re-sign Derrick Henry, because I would have relied on Derrick Henry for a young quarterback in Will Levis to develop properly. I think one of the problems the Titans have right now is they're not committed to running the football, and they don't have a bell cow running back. And if I were to fix the team for next year, that's one of the first things I would do, is I would try to go get a bell cow running back. Now, you may have to draft it, because I don't know if it'll be available this year in free agency. Some years are different. But if I can go get a big-time running back, I'm going to do it, because I want Cam throwing the ball 15, 16 times a game. I don't want Cam throwing the ball 28 times a game. And I think Brian Callahan, no matter what he says, I don't think he could have ever committed himself to running the football. Well, if you want to develop Cam, you got to bring him along. You need to get him a tight end. You need to get him a running back. And you need to run the ball the way that they ran the ball with DeMarco Murray when Mariota was a young quarterback. Mike says 2 first-rounders are a lot, but let's not act like corner isn't a premium position. Yeah, who were the Eagles corners last year? Quinyon Mitchell, who was a middle of the first round pick. And who was the other corner? I don't even know. L'Jarius Sneed was a corner for a Super Bowl team. And they were like, yeah, no, we're good. Corners do not matter. Pass rush matters. The way the rules are in the NFL today, corners cannot be physical with wide receivers. And so if you don't get to the quarterback, even the best corner can't cover. I thought the end of the Bengals-Rams Super Bowl encapsulates how important a pass rush is compared to a corner. Because on the final play, Joe Burrow is running, and Jamar Chase has beaten Jalen Ramsey. That is good on good. And if Joe Burrow can get a throw off, it's a touchdown for Cincinnati. But Aaron Donald did not allow Joe Burrow to get the throw off. Corners are like guards and inside linebackers and safeties and tight ends if they're not Brock Bowers. They're important. I mean, you can't not have a corner out there. You can't just stick Jalen Armour Davis out there. But I'm not trading 2 first-round draft choices for one, even the best one. I'm not doing it. Not in today's game. I'll do it for a pass rusher. I'll do it for a tackle. I'll do it for a quarterback. I'm not doing it for a corner. Adam from Portland says, I'm just glad they didn't trade Sweat. Still don't understand why his name was even a rumor. I don't understand our organization. She is a moron. Brinker is a moron. We are the Browns. Well, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that they think that T'Vondre Sweat doesn't have a lot of upside. They think he's a run-stuffing DT, and they think he's fat and lazy. And my guess is they've got a young team where they are trying to build a young core the same way the Titans built their young core around Mariota and Lewan and Conklin and Henry and Byard, and you build the young core, Corey Davis, and they look at Sweat and they say, we don't see his personality as part of the young core with Ward and Latham and Skoronski and whomever else. Winston. Not a whole lot of young players to pick from around here. I mean, I think that they look at T'Vondre Sweat the same way Mike Mularkey and John Robinson looked at Dorial Green Beckham. I mean, Mike Mularkey hated Dorial Green Beckham. I think he called him out after a preseason game. Like he played one preseason game and Mularkey called him out and they traded him for Dennis Kelly the next day. And the fan base could not believe it because people were like, yeah, this Dennis Kelly on the Eagles, they would have cut him if they couldn't have found a trade partner. So they got something in return and Tennessee got Dennis Kelly. And it was like, what? You gave away Dorial Green Beckham. And the truth is, Dorial Green Beckham was dumb and lazy, and he never had much of an NFL career because of it, in spite of all the talent Dorial Green Beckham had. And my guess is, when you ask, why is T'Vondre Sweat's name in the mix, they look at him kind of the way that they look at Dorial Green Beckham. Josh says, didn't a corner just win Defensive Player of the Year? Yes, that would be Patrick Surtain II. And guess what? His team lost in the wild card round of the playoffs. Now, Jalen Carter's team won the Super Bowl. Who would you rather have? Jalen Carter or Patrick Surtain II? Who would you rather have? Micah Parsons or Patrick Surtain II? The answer is the pass rusher. A good pass rush makes Pro Bowl secondaries. Give me a break. Unbelievable. The distinguished gentleman says Jeremiah Love is the answer in the draft. The problem is if you draft Jeremiah Love, now you don't get Jordan Tyson. And you're going to need to get a wide receiver, and you're going to need to get a tight end, and you're going to need to, and I think that's probably going to be an issue. Juan says, I'm just ready for the Titans turnaround script. So I actually have kind of a plan that if I took over the team at 3:00 today, and again, according to PK, the Titans are done making moves, I do have a plan that I think they should implement. And I'm going to be fascinated to hear what Mike Borgonzi has to say tomorrow about what that actual plan they're going to put together is. Now, speaking of the Borgonzi press conference. So I am going to be at the Borgonzi press conference tomorrow. And I did not know if I was going to be able to make it to the Borgonzi press conference because they've changed the way the credentialing for the press conferences works. Now, that's not because I'm not with the radio station anymore. I'm still with 440, which is credentialed, and I'm with Sirius XM, of course. But the NFL is requiring game day credentials now for facility access. And I don't think I've had a game day credential since the 2019 AFC Championship game in Kansas City. I do not cover the games. And I remember standing up there in the press box, like standing above Corey Curtis's shoulder and just like whispering into his ear, because I hate sitting in the press box. You can't cheer in the press box. I'm a Titan fan. I like to root, cheer, etc. And I'm sitting there in the AFC title game like, God, Jim, why are you fucking doing that? So I haven't had a game day credential in forever. So, but I've talked to the Titans. I will be at the press conference tomorrow for Mike Borgonzi. And my questions for Mike Borgonzi are not going to be what I think a lot of people are going to ask, what I think a lot of you right now would ask if Mike Borgonzi was in front of you. You know, the idea of, why didn't you make any more trades? Why is Chig still on the team? Why is Arden Key still on the team? Were there deals out there to be made? Could you have gotten a 6th round pick? Could you have gotten a 4th round pick? Tony Pollard, what's the big picture? That's really not what I care about. Now, that will get asked tomorrow, but that's not really what I'm focused on. What I'm focused on are kind of 4 main questions. Number 1, I want Mike Borgonzi to walk me through how the decisions around here are getting made. So let's use an example to trade somebody or not trade somebody. Is that between you and Chad? Do you have to ask Chad's permission? When it came to trading Jarvis Brownlee, were you on the phone talking to the Jets and you had the authority to say, deal? Dre'Mont Jones, did you have the authority to say deal, or do you have to go check with Chad before you can go ahead and make those? And again, that's what I want to know, because I want to know how the decisions in the organization actually get made. What are you responsible for? What's Chad responsible for? Number 2, when he took the job, he said, if you draft a young quarterback, you have to have a plan. That's what he learned from Kansas City with Mahomes, was there has to be a plan. And even though they had Mahomes on the bench and they saw him in practice every day and it was tempting to put him out there, the plan said Mahomes sits the bench. What's the plan for Cam? Because I highly doubt that the plan for Cam involved having the coach fired 6 games into the season. So what is the plan for Cam? I think I would say, ask how much of this roster has to be built through veteran acquisitions going forward. Because I know the motto is draft, develop, retain, but they don't have enough picks going into next year's draft right now to rebuild the team through the draft. So they are going to have to acquire veterans one way or another to build this thing back up. And then I think a question that I would have for Mike Borgonzi, and I think it's a fair question, and it's going to sound contentious when it's asked, but I don't mean for it to be contentious. But is he surprised by how uncompetitive this team has been this season? And if you are surprised, what have you learned? Because the number 1 step in order to solve a problem is to realize the problem and then adjust. So that's where we sit. Again, the big news today, the Titans did not make any other trades other than the Dre'Mont Jones trade. PK saying they're done. It's now 13 minutes after the deadline. They're done. I'm fine with the Dre'Mont Jones trade. The conditions could make it into a 4th round pick. If it's a 4th round pick because the Ravens make the playoffs, it'll be a low 4th round pick. Because it's the Jets' 5th round pick, it'll be a high 5th round pick if it's a 5th. So it's going to be between picks 119 and 145. There are players you can get in that area that become important players down the road, like a David Stewart, who was a starting right tackle for a long time. Benji Olson, who was a starting right guard for 10 years. Justin McCareins, David Stewart, Jacob Bell, Peter Sirmon. We'll see on Gunnar Helm, who was picked in that range. But apparently, that's it. No Calvin Ridley, no T'Vondre Sweat, no Jeffery Simmons, no Chig Okonkwo, no Arden Key, no Tony Pollard, no Xavier Woods, no Jihad Ward. And now we just live through the next 8 weeks, and then we start over to see if the Titans have a plan. That's it for us. Again, the press conference is tomorrow at 10 a.m. I will be there. And then after that, we will be live 2 o'clock for a Stillman & Company breaking down what they said at the press conference. That's it for us, Stillman & Company. Like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast, YouTube, Stillman & Co. Tell your friends, like and subscribe. We'll see everybody live tomorrow at 2 o'clock.